Photography. It's one of the greatest inventions in history. To be able to see light and capture it in a single frame is incredible and beautiful. But as much as it captures a moment, it forces us to use our imagination. And there's no better example of this than those from photographers such as Girard, Todd Hido, and Fan Ho. These images are pleasing to look at. It shows life in a bizarre way. Some make you feel like you are in the moment, others make you feel distant, and some make you feel lonely. Images like these can speak 1,000 words, but each has their own story, and there's none other than war photography. Following the start of the Vietnam War, the tension between the country and the US was higher than ever before, and the political divide between North and South Vietnam would become more intense as time went on. Because of the time period the war occurred in, it became heavily documented due to improvements in technology. It wasn't uncommon to have hundreds of press photographers working with the US and Southern Vietnamese to document the war. As a result, it caused many to capture some of the most horrific images ever. You've probably seen this image before, but if you haven't, how does it make you feel? Uncomfortable? Scared? Maybe even a little morbidly curious? If so, that's normal. It shows a man's final moment in life, captured in one frame, forever. Without context, the image is appalling. You almost want to look away, but at the same time, you can't. It's in our nature to destroy ourselves, and because of that, we remain curious. Human-on-human violence is a horrific thing, but this image doesn't do justice on just how horrible the execution was. To be more specific, the one who was executed. Prior to his execution, Nguyen Van Lem was a notoriously wicked person. Before his arrest, he killed a police major along with his wife and kids, which just so happened to be the executioner's friend. Although, this might not be true. While Lem was a part of the Viet Cong, which had notoriously killed many who opposed them, including civilians, it does not mean that he participated in such activities. While there is decent evidence to point towards this being true, including the photographer named Eddie Adams, who believed he committed such a crime, we will never know for certain. This brings up the question, should we execute others for their crimes? I mean, what if the crime isn't severe enough to justify an execution? What if they were wrongly accused? Hell, would killing them change anything? As awful as these questions may be, it's important to ask them. War photography challenges our worldview. It's easy to not think about hostile situations when you are comfortable in your home. But this type of photography, while distant, brings you to a person's point of view. It's horrible to look at, but it makes us ask questions that need to be heard. And on a few occasions, we all ask ourselves, is this ethical? I mean, you are photographing someone's last moments. Well, Eddie Adams answered the question himself. I was getting money for showing one man killing another. 2 lives were destroyed, and I was getting paid for it. I was a hero. Although, he would further elaborate, stating, 2 people died in that photograph. The general killed the Viet Cong. I killed the general with my camera. It's statements like these that makes us question if it's okay to photograph a person at their most vulnerable point. It's not an easy thing to answer. Every person will have a different opinion, but there's no denying that it needs to be seen and talked about. Photographing one's death is eerie, but what if it's photographing innocence next to evil? How does this photo make you feel? Distressed? Frightened? Maybe even a little angry? This photo, titled Warsaw Ghetto Boy, shows just a tiny fraction of one of the most horrific atrocities in human history, the Holocaust. Taken during the Warsaw Ghetto uprising of 1943, it showcases a terrified young boy forcibly raising his hands up alongside his mother and others. The photo is horrific, and despite its presence, it shouldn't exist to the public. Starting in 1941, hundreds of thousands of Jews living in or near Warsaw, Poland, were forced into the ghetto, which was a 1.3 square mile area. As a result, it quickly became overpopulated. Due to this, and it being an impoverished area, disease such as typhus was rampant. Moreover, with a food ration of only 180 calories per person, any chances of survival were near impossible. Consequently, many Jews, mostly children, would smuggle food into the ghetto in a desperate attempt to survive. Yet, this proved to be exceptionally dangerous, as being caught with more food than what was given would result in a death sentence. This, paired with other factors such as mass deportation of Jews to extermination camps, resulted in a desperate attempt for survival, which caused the creation of a Jewish resistance group in late 1942. However, they could not act right away, as they needed to smuggle weapons and other supplies inside the ghetto to resist the Germans. It wasn't until 1943 when they were almost ready. Although, on the 19th of April, the SS unexpectedly decided to deport the remaining Jews to labor camps. Because of this, the Jewish resistance knew they had to attempt to delay or outright stop the deportation of the remaining Jews. So, what happened next would be the start of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. When the SS surrounded the ghetto at approximately 2 a.m., the ZOB, known as the Jewish Combat Organization, secretly put the ghetto on high alert to make sure the combatants and the civilians were aware of what was about to happen. And then, starting at 3 a.m., the Germans would barge into the ghetto, demanding Jews to leave their homes to be deported. But the Jewish resistance ambushed the SS, catching them off guard, using weapons such as firearms, grenades, and many more. This proved to be surprisingly successful, which forced the Germans to retreat. But because of the retreatment, the SS police leader of Warsaw, named Ferdinand von Sommern-Frankenegg, would be dismissed from his position by Heinrich Himmler due to his failure to suppress the uprising. As a result, Jurgen Stroop, an SS Brigadeführer, would replace Sommern in an attempt to suppress the uprising. This is important to note, as Jurgen would play a significant role in documenting the uprising. But it's not because he wanted to show the world the atrocities he and others were committing. Instead, it was to show Heinrich how well they suppressed the uprising. Although, before attempting to suppress the uprising, Stroop gave the resistors a final choice. If they surrendered now, the ghetto would remain. If not, it would be completely destroyed. Knowing they would be killed even if they surrendered, the Jewish resistance denied Jurgen's ultimatum and continued fighting. It's horrifying. Jurgen knew what he was doing, but rather than feeling guilty, he felt proud. Documenting the suppression was a way for him to boast, showcasing how well he was able to destroy others that were classified by the Nazi Party as subhuman. Due to this, Stroop's photographers would begin to document the suppression of the uprising. The photos are unique. Barely any of its kind exists. It shows the ghetto's buildings being destroyed by the Germans. Jews being questioned, executed, and forced to leave their homes. The photos have no sound. They are just a moment frozen in time. We will never know their names, their stories, or how they felt in those moments. All we do know is most, if not all of them, were sent to extermination camps. These photos were the last time they'd be seen in the world, forever stuck in the past. History will always repeat itself. It's just a matter of teaching it in an attempt to delay it. On September 11th, a professional photojournalist named Bill Biggart, who was living in New York at the time, had just received news from a taxi driver that a plane had just hit the World Trade Center. Registering what he heard, he would immediately head towards his apartment and grab 3 cameras, 2 film and 1 digital, immediately heading towards the World Trade Center. As he was heading towards the plaza, the second plane impacted the South Tower, in which he would quickly pull out one of his cameras to capture the photo. Although, this moment would be short-lived. Because of his experience being a photojournalist, he would eventually capture a photo of both towers burning while being near the base of the buildings. Though this moment was brief, as, while shifting towards the North Tower, he would capture part of the South Tower collapsing. It is some of the closest known photos of the collapse. It showcases the steel columns bent and snapped from the forces, along with concrete and other materials disintegrating into dust. Incredibly, despite being just hundreds of meters from the base of the 2 towers, Bill survived. But rather than calling it a day, he would continue to capture photos of those who just barely survived the collapse. The photos show an eerie side of survival. The South Tower was no longer a center for trades. It was turned into ground zero, and with the potential impending collapse of the North Tower, any chance to evacuate was needed. But Bill didn't evacuate. Just like any photojournalist, he went to the heart of the site. What he captured next was one of the few photographs captured at ground zero following the collapse of the South Tower. It shows the chaos of the event. Nearly every man was for themselves. During this time of photographing the chaos, Bill's wife, named Wendy, would call him to see if he was safe. Bill would then pick up the call, saying, "I'm safe. I'm with the firemen." These would be the last known words Bill spoke to anyone, but unknown to him, the clock was ticking. At 10:25:02 a.m., he would take this photo. It showcases survival among destruction, papers and dust left behind from the now gone South Tower. Then he would take a photo near the North Tower, showing the destruction of the Marriott Hotel due to the collapse of the South Tower, while a fireman looks directly at the destruction. The time? 10:28:13 a.m. And just 11 seconds later, he would take a closer image of the destroyed Marriott. We will never know what Bill's thoughts were during those final moments. Upon the discovery of his body, he, along with his bag, was destroyed. The fact that any of his photos survived is a miracle, but it's a good thing it did. It showcases a view that very few have seen, what it was like to be at the World Trade Center on that day. But it also shows the grim reality of being a photojournalist. You have to take risks for shots. Unfortunately, that risk can cost your life. Following the weeks up into April and May of 1980, multiple photographers such as Robert Landsburg were camping by the summit of Mount St. Helens to observe and capture photos of what appeared to be a heavily changing mountain. During these months, multiple earthquakes hit the mountain and the surrounding area, causing the mountain to emerge from deep hibernation. And by mid-May, a growing bulge of hot magma on the north flank of the mountain became noticeable. That is, if you compare photographs. To the human eye, the bulging of the right side of the mountain was slow. Unless you had good memory, you wouldn't notice any changes within weeks. This indicates that while an eruption was possible, the chances of it happening soon was unlikely. But, unbeknownst to the observers, the mountain would erupt sooner than expected. On May 18, 1980, a magnitude 5.1 earthquake hit Mount St. Helens, triggering the entire north face of the mountain to slide away, resulting in a tremendous eruption. As a result, many observers, such as Robert Landsburg, who were viewing the mountain, were completely caught off guard by the sudden, powerful explosion. Consequently, due to many being close to the mountain's proximity, such as Robert, who was a few miles away from the base of the mountain, would have to evacuate as quickly as possible for any chance of survival. But due to the incredible speed of the pyroclastic flow, Robert realized his chance of survival was next to impossible. So, rather than evacuating, he would document the eruption, taking photos as it got closer, eventually winding up his film to put it in his bag and laying on top of it to protect it. Upon discovery, his body was covered in feet of ash. As for his camera equipment, it would be destroyed beyond recognition. Although, incredibly, his final shots managed to survive just enough to allow them to be developed. The images show a view that few have experienced: the expulsion of ash near the base of an erupting volcano. Mixed in with the nearly destroyed film, the photographs look like hell on Earth. We will never fully know how Robert felt during those final photos. All we do know is that he knew there was no way of escaping. He was a dead man walking before his life was taken. His actions to save his film could be, in some ways, argued as heroic. Future generations have been able to look and study his final images. It's beautifully haunting, but it does make us ask one question. If we were in his shoes, would we do the same? It's tough to say. Unless we were to experience this exact scenario, we would never know with certainty. This is why photography is such a powerful tool. It gives us a view into another's life, but for each person, the way they view a photograph will be different compared to others. Photography, as beautiful as it is, can be equally as horrifying. It can show life next to death, and nature at its worst. It's images like this that makes us want to look away, but there's no denying that they need to be seen. It leaves an everlasting imprint on our lives. It reminds us how cruel the world can be, but also a way to prevent it.